Which comes first, the tarot or witchcraft? Of course, not all witches use the tarot, but lots do. Probably the majority use tarot, especially in Western countries and here in Japan. I think most witches use the tarot. For me, I studied the tarot before I became interested in witchcraft. The tarot led me into witchcraft, and for many people, it's the other way around. Through witchcraft, they're led towards the tarot. But there seems to be a connection between tarot and witchcraft. Of course, that's a very modern thing. If we go back in history, witches wouldn't have been able to get tarot decks even if they were available. But in this modern era, tarot and witchery seem to go together. In this video, I'll be talking about 4 tarot decks that I own and use now. When I lived in England, I had a large collection of tarot decks, but most of them I didn't use, and really I only had one working deck. When I came to Japan, for the first 10 years in Japan, I gave up the tarot and didn't use it at all. But then I got a new deck, and gradually the decks have changed, and now I have 4 decks. 3 decks are ones that I originally had in Britain, and one is one that I've only had in Japan. But they're not a collection. They're all working decks, but they work in different ways. So I'd like to introduce you to my different tarot decks and how I use them and why they're special for me. This is the Witch's Tarot. This was my main deck for about 6 years. Before that, I had a very special tarot deck, but I gifted it to a tarot student when she passed her tarot course with me. I wanted to replace it with the same one, but the original version was out of print and the new version had not so good pictures on it, so I had to find something new. So I chose this one, the Witch's Tarot. I love the colours, I love the vibrancy, I find it easy to read. It's an exciting, vibrant deck. Most of the cards have the original tarot names in them, the traditional tarot names, but there are 3 exceptions. I'll show you one exception. Here we have the shadow side. The shadow side. This takes the place of the devil in this deck. It's a beautiful card with beautiful symbolism used in place of the devil. I also love the backs of this deck. Backs of tarot decks are important for me too. I love this deck. But I'm going to tell you about my number 1 deck at the end of the video. Before that, I'm going to show you 2 more. This is the Rider-Waite deck, probably the most popular deck in the world. More copies of this have been sold than any other tarot card, I believe. For many people, it's the first deck that they buy. For me, it was the second one. And my original deck is now somewhere in Britain. I don't know where it is. But here in Japan, I bought it again. It's easy to read. It's enjoyable to read. It's not my favorite deck, but I like using it. And especially I like using it for teaching the tarot. It's really good for teaching the tarot. One thing that I really like about this deck is the use of the colour yellow. So here we have the Fool with this beautiful yellow sky. We have the Ace of Pentacles with a beautiful yellow pentacle. the Ace of Cups with this fantastic yellow chalice. And even the Death card has a splash of yellow. There's something about the colour yellow in the Rider-Waite deck that I love. Which tarot is in this box? What do you think? Maybe we have a clue here. Can you guess? I had the Thoth deck in England and I tried to study it by Aleister Crowley's own book. But I found it very difficult and very confusing and somewhat dark and disturbing at that time. Of all the decks that I had at that time, it was the one that was both fascinating but also scary, and I often put it away. But I decided to retry the deck again here in Japan, so I rebought the deck. And I also bought this book. This is a fantastic book for studying the Thoth Tarot. I think Crowley's own book is very difficult. But if you read this one first and then the Crowley book together, you can get a real feeling of it. Still, the Crowley deck is not a deck that I generally use a lot, other than for studying, because it's so symbolic and so interesting. So I like to study it. I occasionally use it, but mainly I study it. But it's a great deck. This is the Mythic Tarot. The first tarot that I ever bought was the Mythic Tarot. When I was a fledgling tarot reader, this is how I learnt the tarot. Such an important deck for me. But when I came to Japan, I left it behind in Britain. I decided that while I was in Japan, I wasn't going to use the tarot. But I only meant to be in Japan for 1 year. But that was 23 years ago. So at one point when I went back to Britain, I bought a new version of this tarot and it became my working tarot again. Until I gave it away to my student, as I mentioned earlier. And I wanted to get another one of these Mythic Tarots, but it had changed. The name had changed to the New Mythic Tarot and the pictures had been redrawn. And basically, in my opinion, they were terrible and I didn't want it. So, for around 6 years, I didn't have this deck. I was using my Witches deck. But one day, for some strange reason, I walked into a bookshop. I hadn't planned to go to the bookshop. I just walked in. And I went to the section that had a few decks of cards. And there was the New Mythic Tarot. But it looked strange. It didn't look like the new one. So I opened the box and pulled out these cards. And they were the original cards, the original Mythic cards. That was an amazing, magical moment. And of course, I bought them again. And of course, they're my main working deck now. My other 3 sets of cards are amazing and wonderful, and I love them. I love them all equally. But the Mythic Tarot will always be the most special for me. So this is my working deck. What is your working deck? What tarot cards resonate for you, or what tarot cards don't resonate for you? Write it down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, please do the YouTubey kind of things. Thank you for watching. See you next time.